looking at. And so now I would like you to assess, from your view, what is your assessment of the option available for African governments? Do you advocate that African governments should be more involved with the economy or activities of the private sector, the drivers of the economy, and other stakeholders and practitioners within the economy? Do you subscribe for the government to have a higher hand in how all this play out, or do you think that government should just play a supervisory role and just observe and perhaps regulate how transactions, businesses, and other economic activities go on in diverse countries within the African continent?
Thank you, my brother, for the wonderful question. I think, first of all, for your internet, I was telling Mr. Noah to try and invest in West Africa so that we have a very strong network all over Africa. But having said that, you're right. Individual governments in Africa should create an enabling environment for manufacturers, for African-based manufacturers and producers. As it is now, a number of companies are complaining that the policies of governments are not favorable at all to the local production. This means that they are not in a very good position to even empower Africans themselves. So we are of the view that government should formulate policies that are favorable to producers, and particularly for African products, because this gives them a leverage to compete with imported products. Mr. Noah put it so clearly that he would rather import materials from China, and if he does that, then he won't be competitive enough, whereas he has a whole manufacturing plant in Kenya. Who would want to go through that hassle? So I think governments should reevaluate themselves. And we have a lot of areas to learn from. The European Union, they have done a lot of work to ensure that all the European countries follow a particular channel. In Africa, we have the African Union. I am aware that the African Union has a policy, they call it the Continental Free Trade Area. But we don't feel it. We don't feel it is probably because they have not done enough to ensure that Africans themselves can intra-trade amongst themselves. We want to see an Africa where Mr. Noah, if he produces his stuff, he can easily cross over to Uganda, Tanzania, Nigeria, wherever, to be able to meet the demand. As it is now, the stringent measures and regulations that are there and the over-taxation cannot make him competitive enough. Let us open our borders, let us flex these tough rules and regulations so that we empower manufacturers, so that we empower producers, and we are able to trade amongst ourselves. Once we are able to trade amongst ourselves, then we'll be in a position to trade with the world at large. I think I got you right, Mr. Ebuka.
Yeah, that was a very good one. In fact, I had to take a particular note when you said that Africa, need to negotiate with itself. And so now let me get to you, Mr. Noah. Now as a business person that is based in Kenya, already you did mention that there are issues of over taxation, of which is just the same experience we do have in Nigeria. A situation where you see different government agencies invading startups, trying to extract money, all kinds of levies, all kinds of taxes, from them, when they are actually supposed to be given tax breaks, perhaps loans or grants, as the case may be. But why do you think this is an African problem? Noah?
This is definitely an African problem. And Mr. Anko has said it's happening in his country. And well, let's look at the interest rates, for example, in Europe or America. The cost of money, as we call it. If I want to take a loan, probably the interest rate is 0 point something %. Well, in this country, where are they going to get the money to do business with? So one. Two, if we put hurdles on the path of entrepreneurs, people who are trying, they put this money together using their means, and then we put hurdles in their path by legislation. You know, let's look at, and again, because we are talking about Africa now, we are making a comparison. In places like the US, there's a lot of government intervention, positive government intervention, sometimes even very heavy subsidies. Which is the opposite. Here, instead of the government subsidizing or supporting you, they're taking more away from you. This is a very particularly African problem. And the third issue is that it seems that on our continent, nobody is doing what he should do. The tax collector collects the taxes, but doesn't remit all of it. And the person who has the tax doesn't use it for the right purpose. The person who is supposed to implement whatever policy is not implementing. So we have probably a lack of commitment to our future and the future of our children and the future of this continent. There is, I think, also a very deep lack of commitment in the African psyche, commitment to self-pride and to the future of our future and self-pride. I think when you go out, for example, all of us have traveled out of Africa, you see the way they treat you, you're almost a suspect, that regardless, you might be carrying $1 million in your bank account, but they still look at you when you reach at the airport and tell you to go aside, while everybody else goes through. Why? Because we have allowed Africa to be seen that way, in that lens of disrespect. So I think it's a particular African problem, and we have to start by changing the African psyche. The people in government and the people out of government. Is it correct to be giving bribes? No. Is it correct to solicit bribes? No. Is it correct to thrive on bribes? No. Because the bribes don't build the economy. Bribes just go, it goes out of the economic system, so to speak. So I think that we have to decide that we want to chart a new path as Africa. Let me give you a short one. I went to China very early on, before many people went to China. That was in 2001. And I saw Chinese putting up cities in the middle of nowhere. They just go somewhere and they build. And even now in China, there's a very big city called Yiwu. Yiwu is built in the middle of nowhere. You go there and you find everything you want to do, small commodities market. But then you see, when I leave Kenya and go to Yiwu, I'll sleep in the hotel, I'll eat their food, I'll use their transport, and they'll buy their goods. And I am building the local economy. This is an example of a well thought out government plan or strategy. Unless we love ourselves well enough to have these strategies and plans for the future, what the Indians call the Iroquois, law of Iroquois. 5 generations from now, not now. See, each time we go to elections, we're thinking about who is going to be president. But what about if we thought 5 generations from now, my great. If we thought that way, then probably we might get somewhere. So the whole thought process of the African has to change, and before anything else changes. Thank you.
Wow. Now let me also get your view on this. So now, Mr. Noah, why exactly do you think Africans behave in this particular way? Because myself, I've been to almost all the West African countries, in this region. So I've been to Togo, I've been to Ghana, I've been to Benin Republic, and you see the same problem. You move from this country to the other country, you see policemen standing on the road on uniform trying to extort money from people, from commuters. You see all kinds of force men trying to violate citizens, and you see similar level of development development across board. You see the same kind of problem all over the place. So why exactly do you think the African psyche has been so conditioned to more or less embrace failure, or as the case may be, maybe just being comfortable occupying the periphery of the periphery in terms of human capital development and also infrastructure development?
Yeah, it's a very wide question, and I risk being sounding oversimplistic. But I think that we start from the education systems of Africa and what they teach African children. When a child begins to learn to speak, they take him to play school and give him English names. And well, I have no problem with English names. I have one, or it's a biblical name.
No, I don't have an English name, and I take pride in that. And also, none of my kids. I said, I told my wife that we are not going to give any of our kids English names, and it has worked for me. And in our home, we speak our local language. So I think that's one thing that I've seen, from the point of view of, because when you're looking at some of these things, you begin to ask questions. So if an European cannot, name his or her kid an Igbo name, because I'm an Igbo, I'm of the Igbo ethnic group in Nigeria. So if a white man cannot name his or her kid an Igbo name, so why should I name my kid an English name? Or even a Jewish name. So I think there is this. So you were saying something, but I just wanted to say that consciousness, that level of consciousness is actually what we require to be able to, to make out something out of all of this, chaos and confusion. So you can go ahead, please.
Thank you very much. I know this is a little bit, tricky, but somebody has to say it. Somebody has to say it. It's sometimes even unpleasant to say, but somebody has to say it. The education system that makes you draw a beautiful grasshopper and name all the parts of the grasshopper. This is the thorax, this is the head, and the more beautiful it is, the more marks you get from the teacher. And this education system teaching us about how the first white man to see Mount this place, and how the white men came, and how we scattered everywhere, and how we were walking naked. It's all messing up our psyche and taking away our pride. I think we start by changing the education system very dramatically. So we have people thinking about thinking the right way, thinking the right way. If you look, for example, at the books that they use in American schools, they are very practical books. They're very hands-on. The books that are used on the African continent are they're just about abstract ideas and useless things and we have an education system of cramming things, remembering things to pass exams. Then you pass exams, then you go to university, and then instead of using the skill to develop yourself. That's why even entrepreneurship is a big challenge, because we go to school so we get a good job, so we live a good life. Instead, nobody teaches you how to make money at university or primary school or secondary school. Isn't this Africa? I think it is. It's something we have to change, and it's quite out there. It's quite out there, really. This is why I'm happy with the Paul Kagame, President Kagame of Rwanda. He's doing wonders there. He's a very practical man, and he stands to speak, and you see the commitment to the African dream, and he cares about his people. So I think yes, we start from there. from changing the way we think, changing our education system and the way of doing things, and then we'll influence government because we choose the people that rule us. That should be the case, yes.
Wow. All right. Now, so let me get your view on something else. Mr. Ralph. So now, for you, we do know that there is an option if government do wants to assist the entrepreneurs in the country. The government can offer loan opportunities and also maybe grant opportunities. So a lot of people, even here in Nigeria, I know a very prominent, professor of political economy and former presidential aspirant in Nigeria here, Professor Kingsley Moal, has recommended that we should have a venture capital of nothing less than ₦1 trillion. So, but now, do you subscribe to making loans available or for grants? Or do you actually think that this venture capitalist approach to wealth creation is something that African governments need to really, give a thought?
Yeah, thank you for that question. First of all, I want to agree with you and Mr. Noah that we need to Africanize almost everything that we do. I think my name is Mr. Ralph, but I don't know if it is African. I need to ask my dad to find out where it came from. But I'm African by everything. Secondly, your question about the support that governments need to provide to Africans, it is very valid. Not only should we look at the grants or the loans in that perspective, but the enabling environment. There are a number of things that governments can look at. I know government policies, when it comes to taxes, sometimes can be really, really overstretching, because basically it is eating into investors and business people's profits, and that can be demoralizing. So one of those things is to ensure that policies that do exist are flexible enough to give a conducive environment to all business persons in Africa. And then the support now would come in for those who are doing production, for those in Africa who are using our raw materials, and they have established companies, manufacturing plants. Those are our treasures. Those are serious Africans who need to be supported fully. I think those are people who government should really dig. I even think those are the people who probably pay a little more taxes than all the rest. Those are people who government should support because they create employment opportunities, they create trade opportunities with other nations, who probably would export, each country's products to other parts of the country or even globally. So I think, yes, grants would really be good enough, loans would be good enough at lower interest rates, and that is something that we can open some discussion about.
Yes, because I really want, I'm just trying to check if our friend has joined us, because I really want to get his view on this, because I'm aware that SBM Intelligence has done a lot of work on the African intercontinental free trade, benefits and prospects. And so I'd really like to get his view on this, because looking at this, I think it's about time that we begin to put action to some of these discussions, to some of these exchange of ideas, and we need to look at the laws and look at the available chances, opportunities that we can actually go through and be able to make some marks and be able to actually exploit the opportunities that we have in Africa, because with a population of over 1 billion, I think we have the market. And of course, with a thriving, mostly youthful population, and with the chances all over the world, we can always take our chances. So now let me still be hopeful that the lawyer will join us before we round up. So now let me get to you, Mr.
Just a quick one.
Yes, please. Okay, go ahead before I get to Sixtus. Yes, Ralph.
You know, recently we saw a very interesting scenario. Right now, the whole world is grappling with this COVID-19 pandemic. And I remember barely a month ago, the president of Kenya went for a tour in the United Kingdom. And he made a plea that the Western countries should grant rights to African nations so that they can produce the vaccine locally. Meaning we have the capacity to produce the vaccine to be able to help our people. But the challenge was that when we order the vaccine from the Western countries, it's either you have to wait for longer periods to get the order, or it's not available. Meaning our people will have to die because we are not able to get the vaccine. So he was putting a plea out there that African nations should be granted rights so that they can produce vaccines locally. Mark you, most of the research on that vaccine was done in a number of African nations. Meaning we have the capacity, we have the ability to produce some of these things that will help.
But something.
It's only that.
Just go ahead, Randall. Yes. So I was saying that there is always this skepticism that grips the world whenever you try to. It's as if a solution is about to come off Africa. People are always not so comfortable with an African solution, if I have to call it that. Because when we take an example of what happened in at the President Raju of this island, this African island, was saying that they produced a vaccine for Africa, and it turned out at the end of the day that when the COVID hit the country, and it was something that was quite terrible. They lost a number of people, and so in a way proving that the vaccine that they claim they have developed has not been very, very effective. I think that was in Mauritius or somewhere around Mauritius. So I can't remember the exact country now, but that was an island in Africa around Mauritius. So now the question is, when you see this instance repeating, can't Africa, for instance, operate according to the standard that the whole world can, attest to, the whole world can trust?
Yes, you're right. You're right. I am fully in the know that some African countries do not have the capacity to even probably do research or even produce. But a number of African countries are way above even some of the Western worlds. We can do research, we can produce. I mean, for example, in Kenya, there is KEMRI. KEMRI has done a number of research and a number of solutions in the medical field, probably emanate from KEMRI. And I know they are supported by CDC, which is American. So you see, the American would support KEMRI through funding and they'll be able to do research. What if we turn that upside down, that African governments now support their own research institutions to be able to do enough research? That is the point we are looking at. So I know probably the country you're mentioning might have come up with a vaccine, but they don't have the capacity to probably leverage with the rest of the world. Okay? But that is something that we can do, that we as Africans, we can produce our own medicine, we can manufacture our own products, and we can come up with our own solutions to our challenges.
All right. So now let's perhaps just leave it at that for now. And so Mr. Sixtus, I would like you to be more specific as to the options or how a free market economy can exactly uplift African economy, and perhaps you can give us instances of areas that free market economy can help to enhance local production and also encourage innovation in Africa.
All right, thank you. Please, before I go to that question, allow me to digress a little.
Go ahead, please.
From what my brother said, Mr. Rao, about Kenyan president going to the United Nations or whatever to beg them to grant Africans their rights. You know, it is mocking and laughing. You understand? You know what that means is that we still do not have, you know, that sovereignty as a continent to decide. Because this is not about, okay, telling me that the Kenyan government, I mean the president wants to beg to grant African countries their right to produce their own, what is good for them. Does that mean that when we produce our own vaccine and allow it to go through all the test requirements within Africa, because we have the capacity like what Raouf said, and for you, the potency of every medication or drug you produce, it has some levels of test runs that it's required before it could be approved. You understand? And we have African Union. The same way the European Union have their own, that when they produce or invent something, it goes through those processes. Why can't we, the African Union, manufacture and invent our own and have our own body and the procedures and approaches that you need to meet this particular invention, need to meet so and so requirements before it could be applied? So you're telling me that here when it is mocking to Africa as a continent, and it is laughable. That means we are still depending on what the developed nation decide for us, the Africa.
Absolutely.
So neocolonialism that we have been thinking that has been expunged is still in Africa. Because you cannot tell me that Africa needs to take permission for them to serve their own continent, the people in their own continent. Please, we need to, Raouf has earlier said that Africa needs to examine themselves. We need to ask ourselves the same questions. Are we really ready to exist as a people bound by a continent called Africa? If we are not ready, then this continent should be sold to Western countries for them. Let us know that they are the outside owner. If you go to a country like Barbados, where the Queen is still standing as the overall head of that country, although they have also rose to the challenge, deciding to own their own country by themselves. That kind of situation is where we can say, okay, let Africa go to the European Union for them to decide or to give us the right to produce what is good for us. The system that Africans have as a people with the black melanin cannot be the same system that the white people have with that non-black melanin running in their system. And so there should be some certain uniqueness in the products when it comes to education for Africans than that they are using in their own country. And that is the reason why sometimes you might be shocked that the potency of the drugs that they manufacture, sometimes they do not even thrive or work efficiently with our own system because we do not have the same kind of system. Because of the way our system is built and designed by God Almighty. So sorry me to digress this because it is laughable and annoying that we, the African leaders, our African leaders still need to go and take permission to be granted right. I did not hear that India went to the United Nations to get that permission or right for them to manufacture their own drugs. India never did that. Our own what is it called? The coronavirus vaccine that Nigeria are using today, they imported it from India. I did not hear that India took that right from the United Nations for them to manufacture it. So why do we need to debase ourselves to depend on what they decide for us? This
It's an
is what the
unfortunate
African
situation.
need to do. They need to come off this. It's unfortunate. They need to decide as a continent, we need to have that, independence to decide what is good for us. What is good for all Africans is what matters and not what is good for Africa and has an interest by the United Nations or by the European Union or whatsoever. So what is good for Africa should be decided by the Africans. So
I agree with you.
In
Yeah,
your
Mr.
response
Sisters is
to the
right.
question.
You may rejoin that later.
All right. In response to your earlier question about what the African country can do, or African nation, or the governments can do, when it comes to this free trade economy,
Specifics.
to help when it comes, yes, the specifics. I will say, like what other people have said earlier on. My brother Ocholo, I think he's no more, right? He has gone?
No.
Because, like he said earlier on, when taxation and import duties and all of that stuff have been heavy in Kenya, that has really impeded, some local productions to thrive. And yes, this is the exact area where African countries are getting it wrong, because when the economic policy is not friendly to our local production, it will definitely kill that zeal to produce. It will definitely kill that innovative ideas in, right-thinking Africans. Why should we, the Africans, impose more levy on local production? This is the question that we should ask ourselves. Why should African governments impose much levy on local production? Are they happy that Africa will depend so much on what we import from the developed economies? And why are they called developed economies? They are developed because 99, or let me be very honest, 80 to 90% of the local goods and services these developing economies are enjoying are developed locally. So, are African leaders who travel to these countries that are called developed economies, are they really asking themselves questions? Why are they like having this stable economy? Why are they having this self-sufficiency? And if they ask, they should be able to know what are those things that those developed economies must have done for them to enjoy such new leverage and economic advancement. And when it is a straightforward answer. The reason is because they have these local, favorable economic policies that allow local production to thrive. And this is what we are saying. United European Union, they have their own, what is it called? Free trade policy. North African a continent, they have their own
North American.
North American continent. They have their own,
trade agreement.
Free trade economy that allow locally produced products to be circulated within North American countries. But in Africa, like Raoul Vanya said, we have it, but we do not feel that impact. We don't feel that impact because we have what we call behind border barriers that are affecting this, transfer of economic trades. So if we did not, resolve these issues that are impeding the free flow of trades among African countries at the bottom line, it will affect and smother this trade, free flow of trades among African countries, and inevitably it will cause much of the inflation we're talking about, because the locals in Africa, for instance, the Nigerian people, they find it difficult to have a lot of options when it comes to local made products. The only thing we have are options from foreign made products. When we have the options from the foreign made products, it will not give the local production areas to have that opportunity to also be innovative to produce more. And this will affect them to manufacture. And this is what we are saying. What we need is for the African economy to, the African nations to look at the policies that they are using when it comes to African trade to enable local production to have a free flow within the borderline so that we can have enough options amongst us. And when we have enough options amongst us, it will inevitably reduce the price for our people and increase this innovation and local production, and the economy will thrive. So on the specifics, when this economic policy is made that is favorable and friendly, then it will allow for many innovative, ideas to come up from our local production angle. And when we have a lot of these innovative ideas from the local production angle, the government will be able to give them that leverage by giving them grants and loans for them to try. It's not about looking at the innovation that people are coming up with. And when you assess it, you'll be able to give them the grant and tell them, okay, we are giving you this grant that in 5 years, you'll be able to do so and so, and return what we call return on investment. And for us to know that, okay, you are actually in business. When we have this done in Kenya, we have it done in Nigeria, we have it done in South Africa, and then the African countries will now say, okay, let us have this free trade zone or free trade economy where all these thriving innovative ideas amongst Africans, and at this level that they are producing, let us have this opportunity for them to transact their businesses across borders free and or at a very limited taxes. By so doing, so many of these innovative ideas will start flowing across African countries. This will inevitably increase or improve our economy as a continent. Thank you, Robert.
Thank you so very much, Mr. Sixtus. Now, Ralph, you said you wanted to respond to Sixtus' earlier comment on the reaction by the President of Kenya in the UK, as you said earlier.
Yes. Yes, my brother Mr. Sixtus dug a little deeper than what I anticipated about the issue of the President of Kenya vis-a-vis the pandemic. First of all, I think looking at it generally, the President of Kenya's intent was well meant, because we are all in a pandemic and there is no one who is safer than the other right now. You could be safe because you're vaccinated, but if your neighbor is not vaccinated, then you're not safe at all. So the intention was generally to ensure that we are all protected under this vaccination program. And I think he was looking at it from a global view that, yes, we have not yet reached that level where we can have our own vaccine right now, but you have the vaccine. We can buy from you, but whenever we try to buy, probably you cannot meet the demand because you're still trying to
selling to other people.
So why don't you allow us? Why don't you allow us to produce it locally? Because you own the rights, so that we are also safe and you're safe, and we can now collaborate on a more safe level. I think that was the intent. But I agree with everything that my brother is saying, that we have the capability and ability to do all these as African nations. But if I go back to his point, there are a number of things that we need to probably come to be able to highlight this issue of Africa trading amongst itself and even in the world. One of them is the inequality that we have in African nations. We have different challenges that could affect us, and this could span from language barriers. Recently, I was excited because I saw a lot of push from South African movement. They were trying to say that Africa needs to have one common language, and they were particular that we need to use Swahili as an African language. I was excited because I already know Swahili, so I thought I would have an advantage. But that push, I think it is good because Africa would basically communicate within itself in a language that they are more comfortable with. Right now we are using English, not to say that it is bad, but yeah, it is foreign. We have to accept that fact. The other thing is the stability amongst African nations. Different African nations are on different levels. Some are not at peace, some are at peace, and some are struggling economically. And so this struggle among African nations sometimes does not give a good platform, to be on the table. The other challenge of capture, the technological challenges. I think with the modern world now, we need to have nations moving in tandem with the rest of the world. But if you look at Africa, some areas still do not even have access to electricity, water, housing, some of the basic needs that we need. That definitely would hamper this idea that we want to push forward, Migration would be probably another one. If I want to go out of Africa, definitely I would have to go through a rigorous process of vetting, they want to check how much do you have, how much do you earn, before they even just grant me a visa to go and board that plane. But the opposite of that is that whenever you're coming into Africa, you just simply board that plane, land at that airport in Africa, and then you pay that fee, and you get your visa, and you get into that country. But amongst ourselves as Africans, do we have that freedom to migrate amongst ourselves? So I am of the view that African nations should come up with a simple model of approval to allow us move amongst ourselves. And that would definitely bolster trade. Okay? And another challenge that I would probably capture is the issue of displacement. And that would come in about where there is no peace. There is a lot of political turmoil, a lot of wars in some countries that we know in Africa. Definitely that is also a challenge that we can look at and come up with a solution, holistically. And yes, we've talked about the government policy that also hamper trade amongst ourselves. I would vote for inter-trade amongst African nations, and we leverage these systems to be able to give us an advantage over the rest of the world. Once we are stable to do this, then we can match the rest of the world and say, yes, we are trading amongst ourselves. That Nigeria is having oil. Do we have to get oil from anywhere else if your neighbor has oil? No. Let's negotiate with the neighboring country. For example, Kenya, where I am, our neighboring country, Uganda, they produce bananas in tons. We don't have to get the bananas from anywhere else other than our neighboring country. Okay? Gold from Congo and the minerals. Do we have to get it from anywhere else when Congo has it? So we need to come up with systems to promote intra-trade among African nations. And African Union needs to wake up to this call. Yeah.
Very good idea. I love that. So I think that's a very, remarkable, specific, suggestion towards moving the discussion forward. I mean, having a practical aspect of what we are looking at, in conjunction with already what 62 has said earlier. All right. So now I think we are coming to the very, wrap up of the conversation. There are a few things that just came to my mind. Now, initially, I was actually making reference to Madagascar. You remember when the president of Madagascar, Rajoelina, said that they have a cure for COVID. So I think what the world expects of Africa is to is to be able to standardize, to have a standard that can or that is conversant, that is in tandem with the standard, with the world standard, if I have to say that. That is with an approved standard. That is, if you say you have a cure for COVID, you can actually, there's a process, you can actually tender whatever cure you have for further study, for further investigation, for further scientific examination. Upon the examination, the body will now decide if this cure is authentic, if it is, it can be used, and to the extent, like for instance, you see Johnson and Johnson, they say maybe 70%, 75%. The other one maybe Covax, maybe 90%, 95%, and all of. So the body will be WHO. I think they have a team, a technical team. They will look at it and say, okay. So I think Africans should be able to develop a solution that an independent body can examine and find it to remain or to be of the standard that it is alleged to be by the producers. And so that's just what I want to say on that. But now let's just have a very brief look at the crisis in South Africa just a few weeks ago. I actually wanted Miriam to talk about this, but she has I think she wasn't able to join us in the conversation again. All right, so now for us as Africans, what does this violence against businesses, against significant economic interests, most of which are owned by Africans, what does this signify? What is the significance of this kind of unruly behavior, attitude of our own brothers and sisters against our own business, interest? Yes, Sixtus. You can.
How I wish Miriam is here, that person would have been directed to her, because she's based in Johannesburg, and that is the exact location where such unease attitude has been recorded. But I have a few words to drop about that. Hunger can lead to depression, and hunger can lead to lose of hope. And what exactly happened in South Africa was just it just clearly states the disconnection between the leadership and the led. You understand? So a lot of people are out of job, hungry, and no hope of even having, a means of sustainability. And whenever they see an opportunity of such, they will leverage on it to loot and to secure for tomorrow. So in situations whereby you have, self-sufficiency for your people, there is no hunger in the land, such a thing will happen. And coming to, yes, Africans, their businesses being looted by Africans. And I will tell you, that is the area where they have easy landing opportunities to loot. Both of Johannesburg, you will see most of the, heavy capital investments are being owned and managed by foreigners, or let me say white South Africa. So those areas are like no-go area, because it is heavily guarded and secured by the South African security. So the less secure areas are the businesses owned and run by blacks and Africans. So those areas are not that secure. That is the reason why they are easily broken and being looted. So this is also where it calls for questioning. Why are the blacks or African-owned businesses are always the target? That is the reason. That is because there is no much security to secure. That is because the main people who are in the main shacks, who have been in the business for too long, where the money is, they are being heavily guided and protected by the government. And that is the reason why any attempts to go there, and that such person will be gone down. So areas where we have less security is where the people go to loot. And unfortunately, those less secure areas of investment are being owned by Africans and African businesses. This is what I have to say in that area.
All right, now, so Ralph, just in 1 minute, please. Does this situation, apart from South Africa, we did record in Nigeria here during the very popular EndSARS protest, a situation where some protesters moved from protesting, and started delving into routine of private properties and businesses, which is of course very clearly a criminal, offense. And so now, for you, does this speak, specifically to the problem or to the root cause of the African problem, which we did mention before about the psyche of the African?
Yes. First of all, I want to agree that we have underlying societal problems that affect Africans to the extent that people would go hungry, to the extent that people cannot meet their daily needs. And that could lead to frustration of various sorts. That definitely, for the example that we cited in South Africa, we saw an insurgence where South Africans were attacking Africans. It is very unfortunate that this happened, but looting is not a solution in any front. It's basically stealing. Looting and stealing are pretty much the same thing, and we should not vote for it, even if you are pushed to that level of 100% of frustration. Would there are better ways of coming up with solutions? Because I think for that country that we have cited, or any other, we can say that there are some failed policies that are not beneficial to the Africans. When we look at a situation where a number of youth are jobless, then there need to be friendlier policies that create jobs for the young people. Beyond the young people, then we have the fairly aged category. If they have also struggled to raise their kids, that frustration is with them. And so I think there are a number of ways that we can look at this. One is to try and come up with solutions to be able to, mitigate such effects. If it is the government creating job opportunities, then we need to go back and look at how or where are those jobs located. We talked about trade. That is one sector that can accommodate very many Africans. We've talked about manufacturing. That is one area that as well can create employment for a number of Africans. We have talked about technology. That is one area that can also create opportunities for a number of Africans. So we need to go in depth and look at areas where we can create opportunities for the young, energetic, vibrant Africans who are seemingly hopeless. And the only way they find a chance to exercise that is through looting. Looting is never a solution. So as much as we condemn it, we condemn that action, we have to also condemn the states for failing to undertake their duties. I think that is one area that many nations, if it's not through the African Union or the United Nations, that they need to look at how to improve standards for all these nations that are seemingly failing. And governance is about the people. If the people are not satisfied, they can take it back, and they can take it back through such ruthless means. So we are championing through our program, MPAPV Africa. We are trying to champion that African nations should look at ways to improve livelihoods and to reduce suffering. I think that is our key cause, and that's why we want to push our movement further, and that the voice of African nations can be heard by the rest of the world.
Yeah, Ralph, I'd like to thank you so much for coming. Mr. Sixtus, I'd like to thank you for being part of the show. And I'd like to thank Noah, in a very special way. Noah, Noah made quite a lot of contributions and very informed and nuanced conversation towards the overall concern for today's discussion. And also want to thank Miriam for being part of the show, even though she left before I was able to ask her this very particular question that we just looked at. And also would like to thank our guest who wasn't able to make it to the conversation today, Barrister Ikemesit. I'd like to thank you all for being part of the show. I'd like to thank the viewers for being there too. This is Politics Now on Viko TV. So bye for now.